Hey guys, it's Sandro here with a hydrophobic snow foam sealant review today that places CarPro Hydro 2 Foam, Autoglym Polar Seal, Bowden's own Happy Ending and FireBall Ultimate Hydrophobic Foam up against each other in a head-to-head comparison review to hopefully discover a little more about each of these four hydrophobic snow foams and how well they perform against one another in a variety of tests. Now, just in case you're not too familiar with what these snow foams are and how they work, basically they're applied like any snow foam detergent with a pressure washer and foam lance all over your vehicle and then almost immediately rinsed off, leaving an instant sealant layer of paint protection behind. So in essence, they're a super quick and easy way to instantly add or top up your car's paint protection in a touchless method. Now, depending on which particular hydrophobic foam you're using, some manufacturers only recommend using it after your vehicle has been washed, while others suggest that you can actually use it during the washing cycle and even in your hand wash buckets, as well as using them at various dilution ratios. And although I'd love to test each and every one of these diverse manufacturer recommendations, unfortunately time and even more so testing consistency is a factor. And just before we get to the testing, I want to start giving shout outs in my videos to the suppliers and sellers of these products who make it possible for us to buy them, especially here in Australia, where a lot of the time we just get overlooked and don't even have a chance to try a lot of the newer detailing products from around the world. And yes, I did buy all these products with my own money, and this isn't a sponsored or paid video. It's just me trying to support the availability of more detailing products here in the future. So thanks to the guys at Waxit for CarPro Hydro 2 Foam, Super Cheap Auto for both Autoglym Polar Seal and Bowden's own Happy Ending, and lastly to Sublime Auto for FireBall Hydrophobic Foam, and as always there'll be links to them in the description box. In this first test, I'm going to be applying the hydrophobic foams section by section to clean bare paint. I'll firstly wet the paint, as I highly recommend you don't use any of these products on completely dry paint or in direct sunlight, as in my experience it will massively increase the likelihood of streaks in the finish, which I'll talk a little more about later on. So this test is really about addressing their ability to penetrate standing water, working as a standalone sealant, and their effectiveness to do so. I'd like you guys to judge the results for yourselves in each section as we progress, but I'm also going to display a little text and talk a little about the results I'm seeing. Starting with CarPro Hydro 2 Foam, although I'm not blown away with the water behaviour in this first bare wet paint application, it's pretty clear to see that we have improved both the water sheeting rate and the water beading contact angles compared to the bare paint. Now, it's not what I'd consider to be a high level or top tier hydrophobic behaviour, but it is quite uniform and consistent throughout the section and a clear improvement. The next section with Autoglym Polar Seal was a little surprising and disappointing. It did mildly improve the paint's water behaviour, but mildly is the key word here. To its credit, the finish and water behaviour was quite consistent, so it's not like it's patchy where the foam was struggling to penetrate. It's just that the sealant itself seems to be largely underperforming. The third section with Bowden's own Happy Ending was also a little surprising, but this time in a positive way. The water sheeting was obviously the best or quickest so far, and the water contact angles were also far more pronounced, definitely looking like some quality high performing hydrophobic water behaviour. Now, I have to say that the final section with FireBall Ultimate Hydrophobic Foam was actually quite close to the first section with CarPro Hydro 2 Foam in its overall water behaviour, but perhaps just a very slight step down in water sheeting and beading, though still having a very uniform and consistent finish throughout. So overall, each hydrophobic foam has actually left quite a consistent or uniform finish, which indicates that they're all able to penetrate the standing water, which is really a must in my opinion for any spray and rinse or touchless sealants. However, it's also quite evident that they've all had varying levels of success or water behaviour performance. So based on my primary testing, Happy Ending was a clear winner. Hydro 2 Foam came second, closely followed by Ultimate Hydrophobic Foam, and Polyseal was definitely lagging behind in 4th place. The next test was assessing how these hydrophobic snow foams behave when applied over an existing sealant, or in this case, when applied over themselves. The application was pretty much identical to the previous test, however the only differences were that there was less standing water on the panel when they were applied, and that they were being used more as a top-laid coat over an existing sealant or themselves. As we have a look at the applications and results, I want to discuss why I think this second test is even more important or relevant than the first one. Now, although you can certainly use all these products as standalone sealants to protect your car's paint, as many people do, I've personally found that all these hydrophobic foams work so much better as top coats to top up or layer your car's protection rather than be a single primary or standalone layer of paint protection. In my experience, a manually hand or machine applied layer of a sealant or multiple layers of these hydrophobic foams are just so much more uniform and consistent in providing a primary paint protective barrier. So at least for me personally, I'm far more interested in how they perform over existing waxes, sealants and coatings, or in this case, how they perform over themselves. As we continue to look at the results in this second test, hopefully you are seeing just what a massive improvement the second layer is creating over the first in relation to the vast improvements of hydrophobic water behaviour in each and every section with much quicker water sheeting and far superior water contact angles across the board. But interestingly enough, you should also see that all the sealants have quite evenly been improved. So in relation to the best, middle and worst performers, nothing has actually changed in their ranking positions compared to the first test. They've all just been elevated equally. So as we have a more side-by-side look at how they are performing against each other, there's quite an obvious difference with Autoglym Polyseal in that although the second layer did help, it's really not even close to performing anywhere near as well as the other three, and really not like anything I consider to be a high-performing hydrophobic sealant as it's described on the label. In complete contrast, I have to say that Bowden's own Happy Ending does seem to edge ahead with more rapid water sheeting and more pronounced water beads than all the rest. And based on these results, it's definitely looking like a bit of a standout, though especially with this second layer, both CarPro and FireBall are really not all that far off, showing fairly similar levels of hydrophobic behaviour, though I'd still once again just give a slight edge to CarPro, but it's honestly very close. The next test was assessing their feel, slickness and the lack of friction that each of them creates on the paint. Now starting with CarPro, Hydro 2 Foam does in fact leave quite a nice slick feel behind, and hopefully you can see that there is quite a lack of friction on the surface as my old ceramic coating bottle easily glides down the paint. But in complete contrast, I was actually quite shocked at how little slickness Autoglym Polyseal actually created on the paint, if any slickness at all, as it felt quite tacky with an almost increased friction, which did take me by surprise. And once again, this was the area where Bowden's own excelled in, having quite a noticeable slick and silky feel that left very little friction in the finish at all. And for a third time in a row, FireBall and CarPro were pretty much neck and neck with a very similar feel and slickness finish, but I'd say that this time FireBall was perhaps just a touch slicker, but very, very close. The next test was looking at the residue film or streaks in the finish that these hydrophobic foams can potentially leave behind. As I mentioned earlier, it's really in your best interest to apply these products to wet paint and out of direct sunlight, as based on my previous experience with hydrophobic foams, the greatest issue of all with them is streaks and remaining residue in the finish. And another tip I can give, especially in hotter climates, is to apply to half or even a quarter of your car at a time and never ever let it dry on the paint. Now, going by the footage, it's just too difficult to see streaks clearly on camera here, which I apologise for. But based on what I was seeing in person, Autoglym Polar Seal was perhaps the only product here that left a perfect streak-free finish behind. The sections with both CarPro and FireBall really weren't all that far behind, with just very minimal high spots in a couple of sections. And although I can't say that Happy Ending was bad at all, it did seem to have the most excess residue in comparison to the rest. Now, it was just way too difficult to clearly show the gloss and saturation levels that each of these hydrophobic foams left on the paint by using them in a foam lance. So to better show this on camera, I used them in a spray and wipe application over some swirled paint. Now, this will obviously increase their concentration, and I don't recommend you using them in this manner. But for testing purposes, it should really hopefully display far more clearly their ability to add gloss to automotive paint. So as we have a look at the results, there is once again no real surprises here. Bowden's own Happy Ending is clearly, in my eyes, the winner here, with a noticeable darker, richer and glossier finish than the rest. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but once again, CarPro and FireBall are almost neck and neck in relation to gloss, with perhaps just a slight edge tipping towards CarPro's way. Autoglym has also improved the finish compared to the bare paint, but really just barely, and once again comes in last place in this test. The final test was looking at these sealants' chemical resistance, which does to some extent go towards looking at their durability. The panel was hit with some degreaser, left to dwell for a minute and then rinsed off. Now, with this spray on and rinse off degreaser treatment, hopefully you can see that it's really only had a very minimal impact at altering these sealants' water behaviour, which is definitely a good sign in terms of durability. But the real test for me always comes after working the degreaser or chemicals into the panel, which should dramatically increase its stripping ability and hopefully give us some more insights as to whether any of these hydrophobic foams are more durable or resistant than the others. So after this second chemical treatment, we can definitely see more of a distinguishable difference between how some of these sealants have in fact been more affected by the degreaser than others. Now based on what I'm seeing, all the hydrophobic foams have had their water behaviour diminished to some level, but it's fairly clear to see that Autoglym Polyseal has lost what little hydrophobic behaviour it had to start with. But even more telling is FireBall's water behaviour, which has been all but completely killed. And although CarPro Hydro 2 also did take a decent hit in water behaviour, it's actually still holding up really well and very close on par with Bowden's own Happy Ending, that once again seems to be holding up a little better than the others in this final test. As we have a look at the previous water behaviour on this test panel, I'll just sum up this video with my conclusions. CarPro Hydro 2 foam has really been a benchmark product in this space for a very long time, and a product that I've used quite extensively with great results over many years. But with an ever-growing detailing market, it has a lot more competition these days. Autoglym is a brand that I respect with a great history in the detailing domain, but straight up, I'm gonna honestly have to say that I really don't understand where they were going with Polyseal. Its water behaviour is poor, its gloss level is subpar, its feel or slickness is grippy, and I just couldn't imagine why I'd be inclined to use it. So honestly, I'm a little puzzled as to who decided Polyseal was a good product, as it just doesn't make sense. FireBall Ultimate Hydrophobic Foam is a nice sealant, and based on my testing, it's crazy close to CarPro Hydro 2 foam in so many areas of its performance. But maybe that's a problem, because it doesn't seem to offer anything beyond it, or raise the bar to what's considered to be the industry standard. So yes, it is a nice and good foam, but just doesn't offer anything new or different that I can see. Bowden's own Happy Ending was actually a pleasant surprise on my end, and it actually does raise the bar with its performance characteristics across the board in water behaviour, gloss, slickness, and chemical resistance, which I can only give earned praise for what I'd have to say is at the moment the best hydrophobic snow foam I've used to date. And I'm always a big fan of detailing products that force other manufacturers to step up their game, which ultimately means better detailing products for the industry that I love. And just a final note on the testing itself. In truth, it would have been so much easier for me to just use 4 separate test panels to apply these 4 hydrophobic foams. But the more and more testing I do, the more and more I understand the importance of consistency, visual clarity, and uniform test results. It's just simply more accurate, clear, and informative to compare side-by-side test sections that have less variables such as diverse paint types with diverse refinement and preparation methods. So I wasn't doing all that masking to make my life harder. I was doing it to gather the best and fairest information possible. But having said that, no test is perfect, and although I try to be as clear and transparent as possible, I'm sure at least someone will still question my methods or integrity. Gotta love YouTube. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel to show your support for these videos, and I'll see you guys soon.